growing up, or as the war, if you will, concluded over there, the propaganda was so thick here that we were taught in school that we won the Vietnam War. And I didn't know until I was at least in high school that we didn't win. And as I became an adult and read things and learned things on my own, I made my own decisions. I became more and more disillusioned with the entire process, the entire thought process, or lack thereof, of us getting involved over there. And I had friends who had siblings. I have neighbors. I had neighbors and things who were worried about getting drafted for that. People's big brothers and things like that. I didn't have any brothers, but so again, as I got older, I kind of reflected back on it, and I thought, well, so what's different about this war? Well, for one thing, it was during my lifetime, if you will, because I was born before the conflict really got intense, but also because it was the first time that war kind of meant something else. Up until that point, we supposedly had a bigger reason to go to war. There was World War I, there was World War II. We got to stop Hitler. All these things. We have these real legitimate reasons, and yet, even though we were sold that for our involvement in Vietnam, it wasn't the same thing, and there was a lot of deception and lying that led to our involvement there, and in my opinion, it served absolutely no purpose whatsoever, and that was really kind of disillusioning and really sad to think that how much we'd lost for no reason. We just need to think more. I don't know, what does that mean? But I think we really ought to just try to learn from these mistakes that we keep making. We're doing it again right now. The propaganda was so thick. I mean, the radio would play in the house. My mother would listen to it while she was doing her housework and things like that. But it was all very slanted towards us being the heroes, those guys being the bad guys. We're the good guys. We're over there to help the good guys fight the bad guys. And I really thought that that was the way it was. And I remember it seemed a little. I had a feeling of a fear, but not like it was going to come over and get us or anything. I just remember thinking, I was aware of the conflict. I was a little bit. I was aware of the conflict, but I wasn't. There wasn't the anti-war sentiment that we think of when we think about the Vietnam War. That I was not as aware of until much later. I was at the age where I was hearing about these things from other people. I was hearing about it from other people. I was hearing about it at school. It shook me. Okay, and right around 4 or 5 days before or after that, I can't remember which order, Mayor Moscone and Harvey Milk were both assassinated in San Francisco. It just was very scary to me. It seemed close to home. These things were happening to people who were close by. I remember being afraid to go to San Francisco. I was not terribly aware, as were most of us weren't, of anything in the Middle East. It was pretty far away. We weren't the global economy that we are now. We didn't have the immigration then that we do now, so there weren't. I wasn't surrounded by kids from Iranian descent. There weren't a lot of them, well, none, I'll say, in my classes or anything like that. So it was this where we were sort of the first time we were aware of this other part of the world in a way. I remember being very aware of on the newspaper, the front of the newspaper, they'd have the tally of the number of days they'd been held hostage. What made this one particularly scary for me, I think, was because I had kids. They were 1 and 3 at the time, and I really felt like the world was never going to be the same. It was never going to be the same for them. It was for me. They were never going to be safe. They're always going to have threats, be threatened by things that I was not threatened by. Inconvenienced, less safe than I was, and that was pretty upsetting for me. they've grown up with it. They don't know any different. They don't know anything different than all the pat downs and take the shoes off at the airport. And, you know, they get a little scared by that. I mean, they know it's a little abstract, but I mean, they're 13 and 15 now, but you know, they understand that, but they don't remember before that. They don't remember what it was like before that. Again, it was just the fact that the idea that none of us were ever going to be safe again, and you know, I made the mistake of reading all the newspapers and looking at all the pictures, and watching the TV. It just seemed to make it was just way too overwhelming. And I thought it was going to be the beginning of a lot more of that.